Welcome back to another episode of Uncontested Investing. Today, we're honored to have Brian Flaherty, CEO of Global Strategic and Amerisource Incorporated, with over 20 years of experience in medical staffing, IT contractor placement, and executive staffing. Brian's journey includes leading BCF Technology Resources and Next Generation Technologies. He's also dedicated to philanthropy, actively supporting the Alamance community, and founding the Denise Marie Flaherty Memorial Foundation. Join us to explore Brian's insights on strategic leadership and operational excellence. Welcome back to another episode of Uncontested Investing. Today I'm joined by Brian Flaherty, the Global Strategic CEO. And Brian, you've got a bit of an inspirational story here to kick us off with this episode. Your introduction, into the staffing world itself, and then your rise to Global Strategic CEO. It's kind of a roundabout story, but I think one all of our listeners will benefit from hearing.
Awesome. It's interesting. So I told you earlier, I'm degreed in medical technology. So how did I become the CEO of a business process outsourcing company with offices in the Philippines? It's an interesting journey. I'll make it as fast as possible, but I was finishing up my med tech degree. My mom had lost my mom to cancer. We'll talk about that later, about my passion projects. Always thought I wanted to cure cancer, so that's why I was getting into medical technology. But I dated my wife all through college and figured out I wasn't smart enough to cure cancer, so what could I do? And I thought I would hybridize my skill set of having a little bit of a personality and science to get into medical staffing. Got an opportunity at Sands & Associates. All commission. So I got college debt, surgically repaired knees, and wanted to start a family and a life, and all commission. Did a good job. It rose pretty quickly. Got recruited to an IT company. Had the wherewithal as a young kid with from the wrong side of the tracks to see that the world was becoming flat, and outsourcing and technology was the way to go. So they were H-1B visa company bringing on tech staff. I joined the company just before 9/11 and came on as a recruiter, and then 9/11 happened, and then there was a moratorium on bringing people over on work visas. So our product was gone, and as the company was rated one of the fastest growing companies in New Jersey was dwindling, I was rising through the ranks. So somewhere along the line, I figured out that I can adapt and overcome and still be successful. So I was pretty successful, meet some great friends at ThinkCentric, and then started my own staffing company. Did really well with that. That opened me up to a lot of different verticals, a lot of different skill sets. One of my clients was Aflac, and I learned about function point analysis. And then as I did start my family, I had an opportunity to move to North Carolina on a contract and start up something completely different, take all of my skill set. I also am relatively handy, and when I was starting my family, I had a side hustle business of construction and carpentry work, and so I could hire, I could negotiate contracts, I could sell, and I had a knack for figuring out things. So I was admiring this amazing camera fabrication that they have over here, and that was thermoform plastic. So I went down there, started that company. The business relationship that they had down there fell apart, so I literally had to move the company in like 3 months. If I wanted to stay, which I wanted to do because I wanted to test what life was in North Carolina. So once again, I was adapting and overcoming. That contract ended, and before it even did, I bought a house in North Carolina, bet on myself that I proved that I wanted to leave New Jersey and raise my kids in North Carolina, and Global came knocking. No sooner did I join Global Strategic, we had the mortgage moratorium, so I joined in 2010. The CFPB created, and we only did default legal back office work. I was brought on to diversify the company, move us into other verticals, something outside of just default. And overnight went from like 200 employees down to 29, and basically nothing to sell. So we couldn't do default legal work. Nothing was allowed to be offshored. And so we moved into real estate and REO and property management, and now accounting and medical. And that journey has been awesome and challenging. But once again, I found myself operating in a impossible environment. So went from VP of sales to COO to CEO, and from 29 employees to 1,000, from one location in the Philippines to 7 locations globally. So it's been a heck of a ride, but the commonality was figuring out how to adapt.
So you talked about you're in a lot of different staffing industries. Has real estate, have they prepared you for real estate? Is it completely different worlds? How does that work?
Yeah, I think what prepared me for real estate was, they get knocked down 5 times and get up 6, right? So, this industry, whether you're on the mortgage side or you're on the retail side, you're on the investment side, it's challenging, man, right? I mean, it's constantly changing. It's, it's volatile to some extent. It has some predictability to it, but there's a lot of guesswork still. And so, I think being pretty diverse in my background and my skill set and the nimbleness and the adaptiveness, I think that's the real estate world in a nutshell is, being nimble, being proactive. You got to be in the now and you got to be having, one eye on the future all the time. So,
So you talk about the skill set there, right? Is that something that just kind of happens naturally with experience? Are you working on that? Are you saying, okay, this industry is way different than the previous one. There's some things that I need to go back to the drawing board and work on. What's that like developing a skill set?
I think I use vigilance a lot. I use it if you want to be a good parent. I say you want to be a good parent, I'll give you 2 pieces of advice. Number 1, don't listen to anybody's advice. And number 2, listen to me. Be vigilant, right? And so I say the same thing for business. And so you constantly got to be looking, whether it's real estate or any business. I think real estate, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's probably even more paramount. But you got to be always ready to reinvent yourself. And so what is the next thing coming while you're still wildly servicing what's hot right now? What's feeding you right now? What's paying the bills right now? I think it's prepared me. Developing a skill set, it kind of happens organically as long as you're always working on it, right? So never rest. So that's that vigilance, right? So you got to be. I don't think you can set out to develop a skill set per se. I think you have to be adaptive and be always looking at how do I get better.
Yeah. So in the real estate industry specifically, when we're talking about staffing services, what are some of the areas where you're seeing the most need right now? What's been the easiest to fill? What are people really looking for that are tied into the industry?
Yeah, in our pre-chat, we talked about that. And I don't know that there's any one thing, right? Because, again, sort of already we're only a couple minutes into our chat, and what we're finding is this dynamic, right? That this industry is a lot of ebb and flow, a lot of pivoting, a lot of nimbleness. And so I think virtual assistant is a term that is well regarded in the real estate space. And by definition, then that's administrative, right? To some customer service related. How can they help me as the face of the franchise, take some things off my plate, be more focused on, being the face of the franchise, grow the business. Because typically the challenge with real estate, even investors, is they're entrepreneurial, right? That's what makes them fantastic. That's also what makes them a challenge.
Yeah.
And so, trying to get entrepreneurs and type A personalities to pull things away from their plate to focus on things that are more important is a challenge in and of itself. Yeah. That's where I don't think virtual assistants are really always the answer. And it's not plugging my company. There are other companies that do it the way we do it. But a virtual assistant, you're managing them. You gotta take things off your own plate. And I think that's difficult. Plus, they're working remote, and they might have intermittent power outages or whatever. We can go down that rabbit hole later with some questions that are pertinent to it. But I do think that the real estate space is dynamic. One of the things I think that they really need is, true partners who are going to help them identify what makes sense for their business. So if you're investing, maybe it's looking at your tranches and, maybe it's doing, searches for things that fit your criteria and doing that investment, strategy work and research. It takes a lot of time. And then you come in with your intellectual property and your skill set and your, what your magic, right?
Yeah.
And then, and down on the line, it goes with any other, if you're in property management in real estate, then, different, a different assessment. So I think, finding a partner who's going to assess it and help you identify things that make sense to take off your plate, I think is critical.
Yeah, and you mentioned not really zoning in on one thing that's the biggest need. And I think you guys are in a great position at Global Strategic because you have so many different services that you offer. So for business owners out there that are looking for a tailored solution, what kind of levels of customization do you offer, unique services, and how important has that been for you to develop that as CEO?
Great question. I mean, really everything that I've ever done with the company since, I came on as VP of sales, went to COO, and now I'm CEO, right? So there's been a nice evolution, and every single thing I've always had the eye on, how do I build a solution that is going to serve the most good, right? And help the most amount of clients. So we do postmortems on anything. Every single client, when I talk to them about pain, if I can't solve that pain right now, as soon as I construct the solution to what I can solve, and then when I go back to, the ops team, I start mapping out a new solution on how I'm going to solve that pain. I'm like, man, I just found out about this pain that this industry has, or this type of, CEO or business entity has. How do we solve that problem, right? So I think caring about the fact that we want to be a solution to the problem is paramount. I think that should, and that's adaptable to every business, not just ours, but that was our focus, right? So when, default legal went sour, and you couldn't offshore, I said, man, they're going to come in with compliance. I think they'll probably soften their stance on offshoring later, but let's get info security compliant, right? PII is the big thing. So we adopted ISO 27001 data security integrity certification. And as we got more into investment and real estate and maybe even some collections work, we were like, man, we're touching credit card data now. Let's get PCI certified. So then we're PCI, and now we're working into medical. So we got HIPAA certified, right? So I'm constantly looking at where is the managed labor arbitrage fit a pain point, and then what can we do to make our solution suitable to that pain point.
I want to touch on the data security question next, but I think there might be some business owners out there, maybe they're hearing about global strategic or, the staffing industry, and they're kind of scratching their chin. Is this for me? Is there something that's popular right now or worth investing in? I know we talked about the virtual assistants, but is there something that comes to mind that's maybe an easy place to start to see if that's for them?
Yeah, I think there's what businesses should look at is two things, right? What's a nice to have that we really should be doing, we just don't have the bandwidth to do, right? What's going to make our business better, and what can we do, right? That could be literally adding a chat window to your website, right? It could be customer service surveys, post, whatever it is that you do, just touch points, just stewardship, to your client base, and checking in with them, little nice to have. I'm just a couple of examples. Those are pretty, blocking and tackling, but think about what are we not doing that we really should be doing. That's one way. And then where am I churning staff, right? Where am I marginalizing staff? Where am I churning staff? And those are two different things, right? If I'm constantly burning through staff, that might be an area to identify. Or if I'm marginalizing staff, do I have core staff that are still bogged down? And can I take something off their plate? Can I save a little money and then promote them, right? Create a new position. So now instead of being the worker bee, they're the manager of the worker bees, and you're leveraging that core, that nucleus, that intellectual property, and you're giving them, some ownership stake kind of thing. So those are a couple of critical ways to look at it as a business owner. How could I do better? Everybody can use it in some capacity or another, right? I say it all the time. I'm not everything to everybody, but I'm something to everybody. We're basically virtual, we're industry agnostic, and geographically agnostic. So it doesn't, we can sort of customize and pivot and be nimble to almost any need.
Goes back to being dynamic. Yep.
Yeah, man.
Yep. Great tip. Good insight there. So moving on to the data security question, something you're extremely passionate about when we spoke before the interview. Can you kind of just go through some initiatives that you've worked on, maybe some accomplishments in that field? Because in an ever-changing industry, data security has become paramount.
Oh, for sure. And more so than ever, right? I mean, I love to say that I had this crystal ball and all this stuff came true and I was this great genius. I really wasn't. I saw some things that I thought would make a difference. And I again, the solution was sort of trying to solve pain. And then kind of seeing where the industry was going. I did not foresee AI being as intrusive, and cybersecurity being quite as unbelievably bad as it is right now. I mean, just with Microsoft, I was stuck on the tarmac just last week. It was the Microsoft patch, which I will argue was probably still cyber related or, an attack related. Yeah. We had the mounted police had an issue. We had Target, had issues. So, the perception of safety is an illusion now. And it's not a matter of if you're going to be dealing with an attack, it's when. And so I'm increasingly shocked that anybody has outsourced partners where they haven't vetted their partners' business continuity plan, info security, penetration testing, that we want to see that, we want to prove that it's there. And they're using, work from home in India or work from home in some other third world country where, they have no idea what the info security protocols are there. And it happens quite a lot. So we built it around, the first one again was that ISO 27001 data security integrity. And again, it was sort of like getting out in front of what I believed was going to be a heavy amount of compliance, particular to the default legal space. Well, now you're starting to see that in everything, right? So you're really starting to see that become pervasive in every industry. Property management, we have massive influx of money coming in. Property management is a big part of what we do. And so you're seeing a consolidation of all the mom and pop shops who, what we call the accidental property manager, you know, and right, they're being swallowed up by larger entities, savvier buyers who now, maybe when I bought the mom and pop shop, they had one, you know, Odesk virtual assistant working in the Philippines, but that's not going to, you know, work anymore. So you got to go through a vendor questionnaire, right? So I do see that there won't be an industry that isn't, you know, heavily invested in info security. And I see that anybody in my space that wants to, you know, be an outsourced provider or partner is going to need to be investing heavily in it.
Yeah, I promise we're a real estate podcast first, but it seems with every guest, doesn't matter their profession, title, AI has come up pretty much in every interview for the past, 3 months. It's pretty invasive and pervasive in today's world. For sure.
Yeah, and it's the new hot button, right? So, I mean, you've been talking about it as we evolved to this conversation, everyone is clamoring to try to get into it. And a lot of AI isn't AI. It's robotic automation. It's just a sexier term. It's like, when all food went organic. Water's always been organic. Right? Organic water. No, it's just water. So, you got to be careful about what you are, investing in and do your homework. And info security is the same. So be smart about it. My advice is always to find somebody from a consultant standpoint to give you eyes on, no bias. They're not selling you a solution, just kind of giving you an assessment, and then find a solution that matches the assessment.
And your advice has been spot on so far. We're off to a great start with Brian Flaherty, Global Strategic CEO. We're going to take a quick break. Shout out to the sponsors real quick, Brian, and we'll be back with the Money Making Minute. I can't wait for it. Thanks. REI Inc. is the premier monthly publication for real estate investors. Dive into a wealth of expert insights and knowledge from industry leaders and gain valuable regional market insights, ensuring you always have the best information right at your fingertips. Visit REIinc.com to elevate your real estate investment game today. So I'm joined with Brian Flaherty, Global Strategic CEO. Brian, it's time for the Money Making Minute. Awesome questions and answers have been great so far from you, so I have no reservations that this is going to be a great Money Making Minute.
I don't know. I'll do my best.
I'll tee it up for you, though. So it's an investment strategy, habit, skill, maybe a piece of advice, anything that our listeners out there can take with them maybe tomorrow, next week, throughout the rest of 2024 that can make them successful.
All right. So it's you're going to have to stay with me for a second. I'm going to go a little long. I'm going to shout out to my father-in-law, Cosmo Magarelli, taught me, alternate streams of income and pay yourself like a bill. And those are adaptable to investment strategies as well. And I'll take that pivot, and it'll be a reach to get there in a second, but don't have analysis paralysis either. So dive in, look at your data, and at some point though you just have to jump off and do it. But be aware of the fact that you have to have alternate streams of income. You have to be ready for anything. So be good at what you focus on what you're good at, but be prepared to shift and pivot, because no matter how great the analysis is, something may still go wrong. I often talk about COVID, and maybe the Hilton COO was doing projections for 2020. Well, his projections were off, right? So no one saw COVID coming. And so be as prepared as you could possibly be, do all your homework, know your numbers, but at some point then, dive in and be prepared as you can be to adapt if your analysis doesn't prove to be correct. But again, investment strategies that I learned were alternate streams of income, which I then took into my own business, which I adapted to diversification. Paying yourself like a bill is also betting on yourself. So at the end of the day, make sure that at some point you have the confidence to always bet on yourself. And I think those are things that served me well in my career.
So a nice parallel from the Money Making Minute there, you talked about alternate sources of income, is the wide array of services that you offer. What's your goals in terms of maintaining quality across the board? And then a second question, if you don't mind, I know you mentioned you're not the only company that does this, but what should our listeners out there looking for an outsourcing partner, what are some of the things that they should be on their checklist when they're vetting, right?
Oh man, two very good questions. I think the first part of the question is I identified commonality, right? And so what we basically try to do is build a nice box. Even though they're dynamic and even though there's going to be some adaptability, there's still 90% of everything we do really falls into, the same, 10 things or 20 things or 100 things. And maybe there's some ambiguity, 5-10% of what we do. So a lot of our customers don't know their metrics, don't know their data, don't know how long anything takes, a time per task. So we build every single solution, regardless of what it is. We build a process manual, a process map. We identify time per task. Then we put together transparent reporting that says, this is how long it takes to do these things. You may not have known that before. You may never had a process manual. And too often, it goes from, it's telephone, right? I'm the subject matter expert. I train you, you train, so-and-so, and all the way down the line. If you leave, well, all that intellectual property went out the window, minus, the 3 degrees of separation down the line. So I always tell clients, make sure that you are, documenting your processes. So in order to maintain quality across the board, that's what we did. So we really look at every single industry, every single vertical that we service, and we break it down to commonality and repeatability. And then, it might be 100% repeatability. A lot of stuff in default legal is exactly the same over and over and over again. And when you get into real estate, it gets, maybe 75% repeatability and 25%, pivoting and being dynamic and flexible. But in order to maintain equality, we really drilled it down as best as we could. And then, of course, we're prepared to adapt. So, we built in redundancy of an IT model on the staffing side where we have bench, where we have our own proprietary training module called Global University, where every single thing I do or we do, we turn it into a module and then we cross-train.
That's awesome.
Right. So that's for that pivot, that adaptability, that scalability, that is great partners. So that circles to and leads nicely into your next question, which is what to look for in an outsource partner, right? So we've touched on a couple of things I think are absolutely critical. Make sure your partner is dual shore. Make sure that they actually have a presence here. Do you really want to be litigating in another country, right? So make sure that they have a U.S. entity, a U.S.-based operations, U.S. operations personnel, and their offshore arm, right? Make sure the offshore arm is theirs. Do your homework. A lot of Flaherty partnerships that it's not really their company. Make sure they have brick and mortar if they're going to be your outsourced partner in a third world country. Beyond that, make sure there's info security in place. Make sure they've got protocols. We just faced a huge super typhoon in the Philippines and, had 100% continuity. We have a food pantry, we have sleeping quarters, we have medical facilities, and the staff waded through water that's, chest high. They're Filipinos, so it's like waist high for us. Yeah. That's a joke. It's a joke. I make that joke all the time to my Filipino staff. But they waded through the water to go to work. They're amazingly resilient. Yeah. Wrote a big broadcast email. I was so proud of the staff and the dedication that they show. But they came to work. So, but had they not, we have locations in 3 other islands that are ready to scale up. So look for a partner that has a tried and tested disaster recovery and business continuity plan. And make sure that they are a partner for you, right? So, I just talked to a client, potential client yesterday who told me that they had a great partner at India, and then it was a bait and switch. They were performing great for 3 months, and then they changed the whole team, and then the performance went in the toilet. Yeah. Make sure that you ask those questions. Be an educated buyer, vet your partners, and make sure that your partners stand up to all those things. Security, operations, business continuity, dual shore. Reliability, and if you do all those things, then you'll be fine. Yeah,
treat it like an interview almost. Don't just look for a solution and think it's something that's easy to find out there. There's a lot of legwork that goes into it to make sure that it's the right fit.
I would say be careful about being price conscious too. You're saving a bunch of money. You're going to save money. If you're leveraging an outsourced partner, you're going to save money. Don't buy the Walmart brand. You know what I mean? So they got to have insurances. What happens if something goes wrong?
Yep.
So
all good to know up front too. So we've touched on this a little bit throughout the episode, right? We're talking about working from home, the digital transformation. The working landscape has changed drastically in the last 5 years. What are you seeing changing in clients' needs, if anything? how have you guys been adapting to that? What's this been like when, once COVID came through, it kind of changed everything. Working from home was such a foreign concept, and now it seems like that's what everybody prefers or expects when they're, applying for new jobs or looking for new work.
I think it's created, we more than doubled in size, almost tripled in size since COVID. So working from home and remote workforce outsourcing, that's not a big leap, right? So before COVID, the concept of, outsourcing to the Philippines, that was a challenge, right? Our work has to be done in the office. It was one of our main objections. Well, obviously, COVID proved that wasn't necessarily true, right? Otherwise, everybody would have gone out of business. So once they figured that out, they were like, well, do I need an office in New York or do I need an office in Chicago? And what else can we send, from home and what have you? And it's now continued to dog the U.S. workforce because now the staff want that, right? So their staff want to be able to work from home, in which case now they're still coming to us. So we're seeing it. But, the Philippines, they got news, they got YouTube, they got, social media. So they see work from home becoming a thing. So it's become a standard operating procedure for us as well. For us, and what I would advise for all of our clients is to be creative, right? So we did a gap analysis. And this goes back to even the ISO. I learned a lot by going through the ISO initiative that made my business better, or our business better, because of this concept of identifying gaps. Where are the gaps? How do we fix them? How do we close them? And then, documentation, right? The ISO is big on documentation. So we did a gap analysis. And so we look at every single thing that we do, and then we categorize it. Red is too risky. It's got to be in the office. Amber is like, okay. And, green can go for things, right? And so if it was amber, it might be amber for two reasons: the security risk potentially of them going home, or potentially the staff performance. They might not be the right staff to go home. You have to have a different personality to work from home and be effective. In addition to that, I bulletproofed it. So I don't like risk. So I'm risk adverse. And so we adopted a technology that is geolocation. You can only log in from your home office. You can't log in from Starbucks and an open, broadband connection, and have to be VPN connected. And this my time in, actually, this geolocation tracker, I could turn on their camera, see what they're, if anybody's behind them, right? Where are they? Making sure that they haven't gotten around it. I can, it's like almost a function point analysis type of thing, and also an alarm, like a knock, like a network operations center, where if they're not keystroking, alarm will go up, and I can, check on that as well. And that's really not to be, we're in the furthest thing from helicopter. It's more about accountability to our clients, that, we are doing what we say we do, and our staff are doing what we promise they'll deliver. And it's more about that accountability than anything else. But I would advise all clients to adapt something like that. I'm amazed at how many people work from home and clients have no idea. Fun fact, used to be the number one streaming day in America was Saturday between 9 and 9. And now the number one bandwidth streaming is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So, all you business owners, consider that fact when you're working from home. So sorry to out some people, but there's a lot of streaming going on during working hours. But that goes back to knowing your numbers too. Make sure that you know how long it takes to do things and productivity measure, and I think those metrics are helpful.
I guess on a personal level too, I'm interested because, as you mentioned, it's your accountability to your clients. So your reputation kind of lies within people that you're hiring that you may have never met before. What is that like? What's that journey like been for you personally to try to, I'm sure at the beginning there was always this worry or anxiety of, these people have to be meeting quotas and doing their job. And, people are going to find a different solution if the people that we hire aren't getting the job done.
Yeah. So, boy, great question. So intuitive, these questions too. I think they're really helpful when you're looking for a partner. And again, not just global, right? So what I tell everybody when I'm, pitching a client or talking about what we do is the only thing I can't control is the human element, right? So no matter how good our solution is, no matter how robust our organization is, how much we try to insulate you, at the end of the day, you still have one variable that is uncontrollable, which is the human element, right? So our solution with the bench, with the global university, with all the cybersecurity protocols, with all the insurance, with all the business operations, business continuity, scalability, flexibility, nimbleness, we have no limitations on how many seats. You can only have one. You don't have to have 10. It's a month-to-month contract. Got to earn it every month. These are things that we try to do to assure our clients that you didn't hire Nate or Brian, you hired Global Strategic.
Yeah.
Right. So Nate might be great and Brian might be great. You might love Nate. I don't want you to, and Nate's going to always be your guy. But if Nate leaves, Global's got you covered. Right. So at the onset, setting that expectation with our clients that, I want you to know them. I want you to get to know your person. I want you to have video conferences with them, have total access to them, treat them like they're working in your office. That makes them perform better for you. But ultimately understand that if Nate walks out the door with no notice, we got you covered, right? So we process mapped everything. We got people on bench ready to go. And so always having that known quantity to some extent or to the extent possible is also helpful. So they don't come off the street right onto your account. They're in our, sort of in our bullpen, as it were.
Yep. It's like a good investment property needs a solid foundation. Sounds like that's
good bones.
Yeah. So you've worked years to perfect at Global.
Yeah. And it's never over, right?
Yeah.
So that's that vigilance, right?
Yeah.
It's not like I go, well, we finally did it. Everything's great. Yeah. It's perfect. I'm constantly fixing things. In fact, I just talked on a cybersecurity panel all about AI, and we have a really rock solid plan. And as soon as I got off my panel, I went on with my compliance team, and we started talking about things that we got to do to make it better. Yep. So it's never over.
It's never over, but we'll be right back. We're going to take another break. Shout out to our sponsors. Get some ad reads in. We'll be back with Deal Breaker, Deal Maker. Brian, thank you so much for the time. This has been great so far.
Awesome. Thank you.
At RCN Capital, we know that time is money. With our competitive rates and quick turnaround time, you can receive funding in as little as 10 days. We offer flexible payment plans to relieve the pressure of the repayment process. Our team is experienced in making sure that you choose a loan that will suit you best. So get on the phone with a loan officer today by emailing info@rcncapital.com or clicking the link in our bio. And I'm back on this week's episode of Uncontested Investing with Global Strategic CEO Brian Flaherty. Brian, it's time for Deal Breaker, Deal Maker. I'm putting you on the spot here, but I've heard you got a good one lined up for us. So Deal Breaker, Deal Maker. So many transactions, different transactions are out there in the real estate world. What can cause a deal to break down? What do all deals that cross the finish line have in common? Let's hear what you got for us.
So you'll like it because most of your people here are investors and buyers and entrepreneurs in the real estate space. So invest. So no matter what it is. So I'll talk from my buy side. So when we have clients come in and we say, all right, well, we're really good at this. We're really good at property management, really good at accounting. We do, all this different stuff with CPAs and that, blah, blah. Inevitably they're like, all right, well, we just want to start sending the work. And they think it's just a faucet you turn on and there's no training. And it's like, no. We still got to do some training. There's still got to be some orientation. We still got to learn your secret sauce. We still got to build out the process manual. And they're like, oh, I don't have time to do that. Right. And I say, you don't have time not to do that, and you have to invest. If you don't invest in the process, then it will definitely fail. And that is true for every industry, not just my staffing industry. So I would say invest. The other thing I always make an analogy on is building a house. You don't just go building the house, right? You don't pour the concrete and start putting sticks up. We want to see the sticks go up. We want to see the house go up because that looks like something's getting done. But there's a lot that happens before you even pour the first piece of concrete for your footings. You got to go to an architect. You got to invest in the drawing. You got to spend that money. And it's no different with everything you do. So ironically, what I find, no matter what the vertical is, whether it's an investor, whether it's a property manager, whether it's a medical, company, they're really good at doing these things in their core. But anything outside of that, they just want to go real quick. Like, how do I get going? Let's just get this outsource partner and let's go. So circling back to the original point, invest in the process, and that is critical to success.
It certainly seems like you spend a lot of time on the process at Global Strategic, but you yourself, you've been a process, right? Your journey to CEO. So along the way, have you picked up skills or watched from afar, maybe leaders that have been in your past, in your career? What are some qualities of a good leader? What are you trying to accomplish every day? Who is Brian Flaherty, the CEO?
Yeah, I saw this question earlier. I don't know that I'm a good leader. I'm old school. We created a new division, a new department called Client Relations. One of the things I talked about was don't lie, right? Be honest all the time, and then don't ever take the short money, right? So as a leader, I tried to be an example like that. The company's growth has been very, very good. It's been year over year, When I took over, we were 29 employees, as I told you, and now, we're upwards of 1,007 locations. But that hasn't been with like huge spikes. It's been like really measured, prudent growth. I don't say yes to everything. We don't dive in to everything, and we always over deliver. All right. And so as a leader, to my staff, when we were growing, I was building desks, so I was on the phone. It's a great picture of me. That I hate headsets. And so I got the phone in my ear. I'm carrying the desk into the office, and, I'm building the desk while I'm on conference calls. So don't be afraid to show your staff that there's no job too small, and lead by example. And so that's a lot to unpack there. But ultimately, I led by example. I do prudent, measured growth. I told you I'm risk adverse, but I'll also take the risk. So I talk out of both sides of my mouth. So at some point I do jump in, but not without looking first. So I look before I leap, and I think that has served me well. I had great mentors, growing up, and I just, I also learned from other people's mistakes. So I had great mentors that inspired me to do great things, like my father-in-law, like Andy Fitzsimmons, who brought me down to North Carolina with the Thermoform Plastics. Doers, He once called me a doer. He said, there's two types of people. I'll do this no justice, but he said, there's people who look at the mountain, and you got to move that mountain, and they're going to want to plan. We're going to move the mountain. We're going to plan the mountain. We're going to, have this strategy session, and nothing ever gets done. And then there's people who look at the mountain and grab a shovel and start digging, right? Mm-hmm. And so, to some extent, I'm the guy who grabs a shovel and starts digging. But I think all these, this hotbed of skills, this jack of all trades, master of nothing, has served me well.
Yep. So with that diverse career, you kind of hit on the mentors a little bit. How important have your mentors been? Has your team been for you? Can you just take a minute to kind of talk about what it's been like with your rise at Global Strategic? I know, obviously, as a CEO, you're top dog, but you probably will admit that you couldn't have done it alone.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. Not only couldn't you have done it alone, with having great mentors, but you need great staff too. And so you need great, team members. So we call everybody team member. So, I don't walk around as boss or CEO. We're all team. Mm-hmm. When I write emails to the Philippine staff, it's all team. And even in Amerisource, it's all family. So I break all the rules. I hired family. I hired kids, parents of kids I coached. I coached basketball for years. So I break all those rules. I do invest in people. And so I don't know, I think mentorship is critical. I think surrounding yourself with good people it goes hand in hand. I've had tremendous mentors. I had, one of them, is Mr. Lardine. He once said, he speaks at my cancer foundation, cancer survivor. And he said, if you're lucky, you can count, the people who impacted your life on one hand, and so think about that. Who are the 5 most impactful people in your life? And then remember those lessons from those 5 people. And if you're lucky, that's how many you have. And then never forget them. Stay grounded. No matter where you go in your career, remember where you started.
That's great stuff. Yeah. And I ask that too, because investors get into this industry. They think it's kind of a lone wolf type of business here in the real estate world. They have to do everything themselves. They can't share any of the profits, or, they're cutting down on the bottom line. But it really is teamwork, community, mentors. It's things like that really pave the way for you to do work when you're on your own, but you can't do it alone. And I think that's a really important distinction to hear.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know anybody who's wildly successful who can really stand there and say it and believe it, that they got where they are on their own, right? So I think there's some mettle. I think there's some grit. I think there's, some common, thread on people who strive for success and get there. But one thing that's for certain common is the people they surround themselves with.
Our last question, again, is sort of advice for listeners, but I like asking the question through a personal lens. So for you, a passion project, something that helps you refresh, recharge. The real estate world, being a CEO is kind of a 24/7 responsibility sometimes.
Yeah.
There's things that get missed, important dates, baseball games, as you met, anything can happen when a deal comes across, and, you got to pick up that phone call. But is there something that you do outside of work that helps you be a better CEO at Global Strategic?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. One of the things that I'm really passionate about, and I think has helped, our business as well, because it tells my clients, it tells my partners, it tells anybody who's involved with me or Global Strategic what Global Strategic stands for, what Brian Flaherty stands for as well, is my cancer foundation. So as we were talking a little bit earlier, I'm very familiar with New York, but not in a good way. Spent 10 years of my childhood coming back and forth to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, where my mom was treated for almost 10 years before she succumbed to cancer in 1993. Fast forward to 2003, started a foundation, so we're a little over 21 years running in 5 states. And I've never hidden that away from Global Strategic, and I never separated that from business. So inevitably, I always said I never sell. I don't sell my clients. We generally have casual conversation. How can I help? If I can't help, then I'll say I can't help. And then that turns into other conversation, and the Cancer Foundation comes up. And I think getting to know who you're investing with, who you're getting in bed with from a partnership perspective, is helpful. And so the foundation is transparent. It's real. It's my mom. It's tattooed on my calf. I'll spare you watching my my white pasty legs, but it's part of who I am. It's ingrained in my DNA, and it's now ingrained in the DNA of Global Strategic because they're huge supporters. It takes some time away, but my family's involved in it. Rudy Casanova, my business partner, is involved in it. David Frankel, my business partner, is involved in it. We have one of our staff on the foundation who Global pays for. So the foundation has no cost, has no overhead. All the money goes to the people in need. So the foundation was designed to pay back a debt, a service that Memorial Sloan Kettering paid to my mom, forgiving some debt when she passed away. And then it's now designed to help people deal with the financial and emotional burden of fighting cancer. So my family's involved in that. So, they get to see, my kids have never met their grandmother, but they feel like they know her, and they see her in every beneficiary that we help. Yeah. And one of the coolest things about the foundation, and why I'm so passionate about it, is I really feel like it's the most diverse methodology. I run the business the same way I run the foundation. My mom passed away from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer, but we help every type of cancer. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if you're a woman like my mom, if you're a mother like my mom, if you're old, you're young. We help every color, creed, orientation. We don't even ask. So there's only 3 criteria to be a beneficiary, in case anybody here watching has been touched by cancer, and I don't know anybody who hasn't been touched by cancer. You have to have beaten cancer recently or be fighting cancer right now. You have to be able to demonstrate a financial burden from cancer and show it to us. So we got to dive into your life a little bit. We have a finance committee that does that. And that's fully transparent. And then you can't be anonymous. So we got to be able to say, hey, we helped Nate with his battle, and this is what we did. And that's it. So I don't ask who you vote for, who you worship, how old you are, what type of cancer you have. It doesn't even really matter. And so I think if all life was treated like that, I think the world would be a lot more accepting. Yeah. And a nicer place to live.
Extremely powerful stuff, Brian. I love ending on that. We'd kind of talked about this before on the call, but obviously cancer touches so many people's lives. My best friend actually lost his battle a little over 5 years ago. Oh. And lo and behold, he was an Irish kid named Brian. He was one of my best friends. So this is kind of a weird, crazy moment. He's in the room right now. I'm thinking
got goosebumps. Yeah, exactly. You got my hair
exactly. So thank you so much for the work you do in that regard. And, with the work with Global Strategic, I wish you nothing but the best. Yeah. If you want to take a minute here, the website, maybe social media, LinkedIn, how can people find you guys and get the solutions that you offer?
Yeah, man, I built the whole company on one cell phone, being 100% reachable. So even as CEO, I'm still involved. So www.globalstrategic.com. Find me on LinkedIn. All my information is out there. 732-232-4331. Give me a call. But we're hands-on. So you can find us easily. And the foundation is DeniseFlahertyFoundation.org if you're curious about that. But thanks so much for the opportunity, man.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate it so much. Our listeners at Uncontested Investing, we got some common sense, we got some street sense, and we got some business savvy from Brian Flaherty today. I really appreciate your time. Global Strategic, check them out. That's it for us this week. We'll see you on the next episode of Uncontested Investing.
Thank you for listening to Uncontested Investing. Questions about today's episode or the podcast? Email podcast@rcncapital.com and make sure to follow REI Inc. magazine on LinkedIn and Facebook and RCN Capital on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. See you all next time.